Hello there, good morning, and welcome to my little arty corner of YouTube. My name's Angela, and I like to draw. And I'm particularly fond of abstract and non-representational art, Zen Tangle patterns, sort of in my own way as well. And it's very lovely to have you here joining me on my morning arty project. I draw most mornings. Well, every morning actually. Seems to be I spend an awful lot of my day drawing and creating art, which is fine by me. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for all the new subscribers. Thank you for all my old subscribers as well. I appreciate you all equally. And for the likes and comments, I also thank you very much. Always most welcome. So at the moment it's January and I'm doing the Fragments of Your Imagination challenge. It's day 25 because it's the 25th of January 2022 and I live in the valleys of South Wales in the United Kingdom, and it's a rather grey day again. It's sort of like it's got that misty light fogginess in the air. So yeah, so it's a day to be brightened up with some art. Let's put it that way, shall we? So what I have here today is my page for today's fragment, which is one called 2M and 3F, and it's been designed by Sandy Kelley Jones, CZT. And the 2M stands for 2 mucas and the 3F stands for 3 flux. So if you're not familiar, there are lots of ways of drawing muca. So a muca is really you go and you go up or to the side, whatever, long line, and then you curve the line round in a circular form, but you don't allow it to touch the stem. You can go as close to it as you like or as wide as you like, and then you just bring the stem down. That's muca in its basic form, and it is nice just to add a little bit of darkness to the bottoms. But there are many kinds of muca. I like to take this end round in a spiral. Sometimes a long spiral, you know, a big spiral, sometimes a short spiral like that. Embellishments, there are many you can do. One that seems to be a particular favourite of people is almost a pop that's kind of furling, almost like there's a part of the leaf bending back over, the muca. It was named by the Zen Tangle team because it's very reminiscent of patterns you'd see in Alphonse Mucha's Art Nouveau art and posters. But it's also very reminiscent of shapes and patterns you'd find in, say, medieval manuscripts as well. It's a kind of motif that appears in many places. I'm not denigrating it at all, but it's just that I see these in lots of periods of time and art. A great filler pattern, a botanical filler pattern, a foliate kind of filler pattern. Another way I like to do a muca is like that, with a frilly edge, because, well, you can. And another way I like to do them is to actually draw the spiral separately, either like this or having that little shape like that almost coming in. Don't use that too often, but I'm known to, and the other way I do them is I like to add little like circles inside. That's muca. Flux, oh, there's lots of ways of drawing flux. Simplest way is a kind of teardrop shape, and I like to pop something like that in, or you can see here where I join the dot to the end so it looks like a stamen. But you can do other things like, you know, you can what do you call it, what's the word I'm looking for, aura inside and so on. Other versions are a bit more bulbous at the end, and you can bend them and so on. So these are the basic patterns that are used here. 2 mucas because mucas are lovely, and 3 flecks because flecks are lovely. Mucas tend to take up more space or are bigger and longer, so the flecks is something that's very good at filling in other gaps. And the fragment for today is to put these into a square. So I've done one version where I start in the corner and draw the mucas towards the corners. I haven't done a very good job here, and then fill in spaces with the 3 flexes. I haven't done a good job of that. This one, I started with this muca right up into the corner, put one in beside and then join them together. This one, a bit of a better job of doing that one, really. Though I would quite happily have an extra flex in here, and I don't see, the reason why. One I was going to do, I'm not quite sure how this will pan out, is to have the mucas in the corners and then use flex to fill in some of these spaces. We've got a big space here, another one here. Thing is with this is if you're going to put it in a grid pattern, I think it needs to be a fairly repeatable pattern. I'm not doing a very good job at actually drawing this morning. And then the question is, what do you do with all of these other little spaces that are left behind? Well, the easiest thing would be to just colour them in black. So with that in mind, let me just get a different pen here. So this is a brush pen, which means, given my ability to control my pen this morning, we may have a bit of a problem, but we'll see. I can always tidy the outside edges up. So that makes it quite dramatic, and it makes the shapes stand out. And it also allows me to adjust that awkward shape there of that muca, because it was a bit of an awkward shape. So there's that. Other ways would be to use something like, I'm quite partial to filling in tiny gaps with black, but then use something like tipple to fill the rest of the spaces up, just to give some texture there. And either keeping these circles evenly sized, but I tend to be quite fond of using them with lots of different sizes to get interest and to increase that feeling of texture. And so that's quite interesting. Of course, we can use cross hatching, which is a lighter area version of colouring in black, which is quite nice. And if I was of the will, the desire, I could use colour to colour the background in, or to add colour to the elements of the design and keep the background plain. So there are lots of things that can be done there. That's a very strange looking one, I do have to say that. But as I say quite often, we don't actually know how things are going to work until we try them. So I've always started these, today I've started these in the corner, but I'm going to start at the middle of a side. Like so. And I'm going to fill this space here with a flux, this space here with a flux, and I think I'll put a little one up there. It looks a bit like a butterfly. also perhaps if I fill these in. I think there are just so many possibilities of how you pop 2 Muka and 3 Flux into a space. And this pattern, or this fragment, this idea, is going to work in any shape whatsoever. It's just working out how you want to put them together. That really does look like a butterfly, doesn't it? 2 Muka, 3 Flux. Let me have a go at that one again, because I could really do with having a bit more space at the top, and I think that can be done by putting this shape in first. Different way of drawing Mukas going on here. And I'm going to bring those to the point so I can pop a flux in there. It's kind of like the butterfly's head. And then very plumptious flux here for the bottom wings, lower wings, the butterfly. So that's quite nice. You can play with the relative sizes. The Mukas at the top could end up being quite a bit bigger if you wished. So that's made me quite happy, because again, this is one of these patterns, and you think, oh, how am I gonna? What can I do this? What can I do with this? And I think the key to playing with this one is to make arrangements that can be replicated in a grid form. You know, if this fragment is going to be repeated in a grid, then you want to repeat how these are put together. So that was one from the middle. So let's have a look at doing another one. This time a bit offset. My problem is going to be, how do I get 3 flux in here? The answer is I don't actually know at the moment. Let me just work with this and see where it leads me. I think we can pop 3 flux here. So that works. Actually, that one works quite nicely. And it's a lot more repeatable than the ones that are perhaps a bit more organic in nature, if that's what you're looking for. And yeah, I am just filling the backgrounds in with black on this one. I think this one and the butterfly are my favourites so far from me. So we've got ones like that. I've said about variations, so how about if I do that one again, leaving some space here for the flux on that side. Let's do that variation. I'm sure this is most probably a Tangle pattern in its own right, but I'm not entirely sure. But to me it feels like a Muka variation. So I'll just pop some black in there, and then we can get the flux going here. So just a simple change in the shape of the Muka changes the feeling of the... I know what this reminds me of. These are some of the medieval leaves, foliage I've been looking at and drawing and working out how to use in artwork. In fact, I've used them quite a bit in some of my drawings of late that I haven't shown people yet, because this is not the only art I do in a day, it's to be said. So there we go. So that's quite nice. That's something a bit different. Part of me is thinking, oh, perhaps I should colour half in black and leave the other half not coloured in. So that's another alternative. So some some alternates there. I rarely draw flecks in a different way than these sort of teardroppy shaped leaves. I do have to tell you that. So you're not likely to see much in the way of flex variations, but you will see a fair amount, I suppose, of mucas. So let me, can we do this in a different way? There's one muca. Have a look. Let's do another muca. And then I could put a flex here or here. Yeah, let's do a flex there and one there. But I need a third one. And that's where the difficulty is coming in. It's this big shape here. And I could pop one in diagonally, but I'm going to make it sorry, there's four Fs now. So I'll take some liberties with how many of each I have, I think, for the sake of pattern and repeatability, I think, more than anything else. So we've got this one here. I'm just going to fill some little bits in with black, just to help perhaps some parts of this just stand out. There we go. So we've got the black band across the middle. Okie dokes. .2F or 2M rather, and 3 flux. Oh, I'm going to put 3 flux on each side. Very kind of floralish, organised pattern there. And that is taking liberties with the number of them. But that's what variations are about, I suppose. I've done this often enough throughout the challenge where I've gone with changing how many elements we have and so on. I'm looking at how I can make, with me, this is nice. It's lovely. But what appeals to me more, if I'm going to be using a symmetrical fragment, in some ways is to have that symmetricality to it. How would I create this? This is, you know, I haven't quite got that right. I know I want to get this central flex in, and perhaps that's how to start that pattern, is that if I put that central flex in first and then do the mucas, and then the last flex can, the last 2 flexes can fit in the corner there, and that's quite structured. And I do like a bit of structure. Okay. And there we go. So there's that one. So that works quite nicely. That was a good plan, popping the flex in before I pop the mucas in. So let's have a look at doing that in a different way, is it? How about if I pop the 3 flex in a corner and then have my mucas perhaps coming to the centre from the from the edge where the muka meets the side of the square, because that works. That's an interesting one, and we've got interesting shapes to perhaps aura and create this going on. I think here I just colour these in black, to be honest. They're a bit small for auraing around. Yep, I have got smaller, finer nib, but I like contrast, so that works quite nicely. That one I like as well. I'm wondering if I could do a variation where, and let me have a look. Let's do a flux there, flux there, flux there, and let's do this so we have these growing perhaps to the outside. Still got that kind of interesting shape going on there, but the other's not quite so, but it's another variation of flux. Oh, sorry, another variation of 2M, 3F. At the moment, I can't really think of any others. I'll come back to that. Other shapes, and I think this is where this is going to get really interesting. Yeah, I've got the mucas acting as almost a cap or a pot to hold the flux in, and that could give me that option to sneak an inner black triangle in place like that. That's quite nice. Let me have a go at that with this perhaps. Is to do the mucas going from the corner from a corner along the edge. So there's my mucas, and then I can pop flux in to fill those spaces. So that is my variation of the square variation of this. It's always fascinating, or it's something that is really interesting to me, is how different ideas come when the shape of the fragment is changed, and how other possibilities come to mind. So I said I couldn't think of any more for a square, but suddenly, by changing the shape to a triangle, I've got another one. That one could possibly be my favourite out of all of these. I think it very, very could be. And it came from a triangular arrangement. So let's go with another triangle. I do like to draw them side by side like this. Okay, we have them going out. So let me have them so they have the mucas here. So I've joined them together. So I've got two mucas going along the edge, and then the three flux. Pop two in, and then the third can be the big one there. So that also is quite nice. I'm going to add this idea that there may be a darker triangle behind, just to keep those edges. So that's quite interesting. That's fun actually. And that's another embellishment I use in flexes sometimes, is just to put a little circle on the end. So that's worked out quite nicely perhaps. Okay, let's try another one. And of course that would translate to a square quite nicely, is that we can draw the ends for the mucas in and join them this way and pop the two outermost mucas in, and then the last muca can go all the way to the corner. So that works quite nicely as well. So that translates. I am going to pop in, oh gosh, Angela, a pencil square inside, because I'm going to create my mucas this way. Doesn't that make a kind of heart shape? And put the flex in, and then really make a feature of this black triangle that's there within. I've just realised I could have done this just by drawing a border around them, but so there's that one. If I take this, let's go from the centre out, draw two mucas, big flex up there, and then perhaps a flex here. So I've still got the three flexes in place. This one I'm going to colour around all of these in black. But then, said the other way of creating that inner triangle is then to draw an aura around it. And I did that triangle in pencil. I could have just done it in ink. But sometimes our mind doesn't always click into place about how things happen. So we're getting some other interesting. This is analogous to, it's probably this one, but on a triangular format. And of course we can do the ones where we have perhaps like that. So that's a variation there. So got a lot of blank space here, so I think this is a candidate for that inner triangle again. Which just gives it all a feeling of a bit more structure, or a bit more I don't know. Structure, I think, is the word I'm groping for here. So that works quite nicely, actually. Okay, circle. Well, this one will take these in all kinds of ways, won't it? So there's two muka, and I think I'm going to pop my flux in up here. I'm going to fill these gaps in with black. And then we've got this lovely shape here, which I think I may just pop a little aura in. And that's actually quite nice then. Okay. And for that little bit I will, this bit here, I'm not going to colour it in black, I'll do it this way just to see what it looks like with that kind of shading in. No, not happy. I think this needs to be all black. If I'd thought ahead, which I didn't do, I could have joined these up here and had a bit of a border there, but that's no hassle really, because that is the beauty of being able to, as individual fragments, draw a border around. Give that a chance to dry and I'll come back with a souffle pen. So that's interesting. So let me draw. I'm drawing a partial curve around, and then I'm doing kind of like this, but just with a big one lobe at the top and a little one there. So I've got my mucus here, putting some dots in, and then how do I pop my flux in? I'll pop one there, one there, and one there. So just at the base here. So that's quite an interesting way of doing it. Like this, where we can make it quite symmetrical. And the flux is the main feature. I haven't done too good a job of joining it back down, but again, that's something that can be played with to improve these connections and so on. Just getting ideas down here. But I also could do this, I'm guessing, in quite an asymmetric way. And then I'm going to have my flux like that. More symmetrical version. It's analogous to this, I suppose, except I've got them in opposing directions. Isn't it funny? I didn't think, with such restrictions of just 2 mucas, that I would get so many variations that do look so different. Okay, let's have a look here. One there, one there, and one there. That one's quite nice as well. It's a bit like that, but we've got both mucas on the same side. So that works quite nicely. And I'm sure there are many others that would work that way, without a shadow of a doubt. Let's have a look and see if... Yeah, let me just... I'm going to pop one in like that. The second one like that, so that the stem of the muca, the part you draw as the stem, circles round. And then let's see, I could fill the space starting at one side, but let's fill this space with 3 fluxes by going this way. So I will fill that one in, that in black, that one. Doing a scrappily, messy kind of filling in with black. And this one would actually do well with having some extra mucas in these spaces here, I think. So that's nice. That's quite nice. So that's a bit on the different side. And, do okay. Let's have one that goes here and there. Now I've got not entirely sure I'll manage it, to be honest. So there's 2. And the third one, oh dear, I think I'm going to leave it at 2. Because I think to add a third would just disrupt the symmetrical nature of that particular fragment. I like that as well. Okay. All right, so we've done these. What about this shape? Oh. Two muca, 1 flux, and 2, 3 fluxes. So that works as well. So that's really nice. Oh, that really is quite pretty. It's almost like we've got a flower at the top. Let's have a look. So instead of taking those mucas all the way to the top, how about if I draw them to one side and then create these more flower-like. Well, there's a different shape of a flux. Reminds me of Art Nouveau leaves or shapes. And I do have a bit of a thing for Art Nouveau amongst other things. I think I tend to go for pretty, although I do have a bit of a thing for brutalist architecture in a weird way. Arts and Crafts, William Morris, is something that I'm looking at the moment, another arts and crafts artists as well, because there's just something lovely about their work. We are, so that's the same thing, but just by changing where these mukas begin and end, changes the feel of the pattern. There's the other flux, and we can have one in the middle there. So that's a bit different, and that is something that I think would translate quite nicely into a sort of into a triangle, I think. There we go. And I've just auraed inside the flux just to bring those shapes out a little bit more. So the space you've got to work with, the shape of the space you've got to work with, or you're well working inside, you don't have to work with any of these. That shape brings out different variations or different ways of fitting the elements of the design in. This one, I think I'd beat it. Yeah, that feels better now. It's having that circle completed there. Okay, let's go for a wibbly wobbly shape, Pangaea style, because that's the new reticulum. So let's see how we can do this. I was looking in this shape as to where I could put the mukas in so that they actually attach to the sides. Now this would be a challenging one for repeating this pattern if you want every fragment to be identical. But in this particular reticulum, I'm thinking that if you create this inner or this under patterning, I suppose, the pattern you can see through the holes in your paper, well, you know, not real holes, but you know what I mean, as starting with 2 muka that go off to the edge and touch the edge, and then three flux, however you can fit them in. From the top of the muka, you perfect them for just working with it. I'm going to put 2 mukas in, then 3 flux, and see what happens. So that works nicely. Any other shapes? Let me try. So Ginkgo Leaf is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to turn my paper upside down because I think that my mukas will fit quite nicely into these corners almost. And then bring that this way. And then my flux. There's my 3 flux. So I've started here and gone to one side. It's so difficult to explain what I'm doing in words. It's so much easier to show. But that's quite nice because it's got an asymmetric movement to it in the centre. So that's quite nice. Let's try. Even though this is basically a triangle, it's got a different shape of, the space within it is quite different. And the way that the mucus and flux can fit in here, I think can be quite widely varied, to be honest, can't it? Much different to the other shapes. This idea of black here is if I take this up, down and here, then it feels that I have got these curling around that space underneath. I think that using patterns like tipple is interesting and fun and cross-hatching, but they tend to be a bit of a fussy background that the elements of this pattern get lost, whereas just plain black or plain colour would work far, far more effectively, in my opinion. This is only my opinion, mind you. Okay, let's go for a pentagon. And remembering that pentagons won't fit together in a reticulum without gaps in between, not meant to. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then that gives me, how can I do this? It's working out how I can fit these flecks in here, because I've got this different shaped space to fit them in as well, so I can do them perhaps that way, which is an interesting one. Though perhaps I could have done this flex here from the top down. Let's have a look. Do this one again. So we had one here, one there, and let's go for one here. And what I've just realised as well with this one says, I see, it's the case where you see, I'm saying you as talking about me really, shouldn't really use the royal you or the impersonal you or general you, but as I see this space, I'm thinking, okay, I've got a point there, I've got a point there, and I've got a point there. So let's fit that in. And I think I could make these much more plumptuous and bulbous, but you get the idea. It's starting from a central point with these. I was going to say muca, but they're not muca, are they? The flux. Okay, let's try this again. But let's develop it a bit more, because I do want that's a bit better. There's less black, more flux. Oops. Oh well, there we go. So we've got that there. I am favouring these symmetrical versions quite a bit. That's an unusual one. As I go back to it, I look at it, I think, oh, that's a bit unusual, but it's quite nice. This one, I forgot to put some of these in, which you can use to add some interest by changing, they help with that movement. Okay. All right. Okie dokes. What else? Last Pentagon. This then will most probably be it. See how I changed the shape of the muka to fit that side? I got it. Oh, I didn't quite do it on this one, but last one can just go at the top then. So fitting those in, changing that, instead of having it circular, is to have it quite square up against the edge. So if I take a different shape here, just go with a square, not a square, a triangle. So change the shape of the muka, and then that would work. That's got more of an Art Nouveau feel about it. It does. So I shall just fill these bits in with black. That actually worked quite nicely, I think. I could have made these more fitting of this shape. So one last go. Like so. Fill that in. And that is a much more, filled in kind of shape here. And what I will do is find a pen, pop that in. So there we are, a page full of variations of 2M3F pattern fragments by Sandy Kelley Jones. A whole page full. So that has been an interesting kind of exploration this morning. I'm not going to do any shadowing or colouring because I think these would work quite nicely with colour, to be honest, as well as shadow. You know, ones like this one, a hint of shadow at the bottom and perhaps at the top would help to bring out the curvature of those fluxes, and the same with others. But yeah. Oh, what do you think? What's your favourite one? Is there a favourite one? You've gone from butterflies to all kinds of stuff. Art Nouveau-y, very, asymmetrical, and yet patterns that are easily replicated, perhaps. And the different kinds of mukas that I draw, and how I can fit flux into weird shapes, how you can fit flux into weird shapes as well. So I'm going to leave you here for today, and just look after yourselves and take time to be creative. So until we see each other again, take care for now. Bye-bye. Bye.